The Atheist-Based Patreon Project presents March 2022 Patron Questions. Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. I'm still recovering and doing okay. Thanks everybody for asking and for all the well wishes. I have just 3 emails. One of them is lengthy and one of them is a call for help that I wanted to address in this particular Q&A session. The first one comes in from a patron who says, I've always wanted to ask you this question. Does Christianity not require original sin to be true to even get started? Original sin, as I understand it, is the fall in the Garden of Eden. Even William Lane Craig admits that the Genesis story is not literal. If there was no literal Adam and Eve, and thus no original sin, should that not show Christianity to be a non-starter? I can't help but to think this is almost a game, set, match scenario. So first of all, since you brought up William Lane Craig, I'll mention that the first video that we released for this month was actually me and Pelagia. It's on his channel, responding to William Lane Craig's response to my video on the Kalam. So I'm glad his name came up. So this is from Charlie. Charlie, you're not wrong. And fundamentalist evangelicals tend to accept a literal view of Genesis, in part for that reason. If there is no fall, then there is no explanation for countless things. The broken world, the problem of evil, the whole reason that there's a need for salvation. What are you being saved from? The problem with the fall. The issue here is that there are people who view Genesis as metaphor. And you would think that this means if they're saying there wasn't a literal Adam and Eve, then there can't have been the fall. The problem is that they can simply point out that there may have been a literal Adam and Eve, but we don't know the details of this story. There may not have been a literal Adam and Eve, and there still is some fall, some failing of humanity. But similar to Adam and Eve, they still want to think there were first humans, and that God had to tamper with other living things in order to create those first humans. All of these things don't line up into one package that's like, oh, here's what makes sense. Because when you look at the Bible, people like William Lane Craig and others have come to the conclusion that some of the things that others view as literal are actually non-literal. And as soon as you do that, you start opening the door to other questions, which is, do you accept biological evolution? And the overwhelming majority of, educated Christians and Catholics do accept the biological evolution. And so then it becomes, well, if God created everything, God's all powerful and created everything, and he could create anything, why is it that you think he had to create a bunch of different animals and then tamper with one of them to get what he was wanting? A God that's powerful enough to do that could just as easily have made them from scratch or pulled them up out of the dirt. Once you have a magical super being, it doesn't make sense for these sneaky sorts of things of, man's fallen nature is an unknown source for us because we can't believe that the Adam and Eve story is literal, but we know that at some point somebody must have, done something that ushered sin and death into the world, even if we don't necessarily know what that thing was. Because it's undeniable that we sin under their definition of sin, and that the world is a fallen, flawed, imperfect place. And that doesn't make sense if you have a all-knowing, perfect God who created it. So, Charlie, you're correct that Christianity falls apart without original sin, but you're not correct that means that Genesis must be viewed literally. I realize and agree that it is weaker once, and that's so strange to say, but it is weaker once you move to metaphor, because you don't have any sort of thing you can point to as, here's the actual fall. How do we know that this is, humankind's failing and not some problem with God, or that there's not a God at all and that the universe doesn't care about us? This next email came in, which is a request for assistance, and I don't have all the details yet, so I can't give you an email, But what I would like for you to do is, if you qualify for this category, please mention it in the comments. And when I hear from this person, I will post something, maybe an update in the next set of questions with how you can contact them. This person writes and says, "Hi, Matt. Thanks for all you do. I'm a continuing education student taking a Families in Crisis class. I would like to write my paper on individuals that have been disfellowshipped and or are being shunned by their religious family members. I've heard you mention that you've had experience with such people. Do you have suggestions for books or sites that could help me with my paper? Thanks so much, Erica." And I did respond to Erica. I didn't just make this video, but what I'd like to do is, if there are people who are watching who have been disfellowshipped or are being shunned by their religious family members and would like to participate in some way, please just comment below, and I will see if I can, possibly connect you with Erica for her paper. See, I help people with their homework too. This is the final question, and it's lengthy, and I have to read through it in order to give everybody a feel for it. I will skip over some bits. "Hello, Matt. I hope you'll respond to this because I have a serious question and I'm looking for some advice. I'm a lifelong atheist and I've always been firm in my beliefs, but I've never been outspoken about them. The most I've really dared is to leave comments on Facebook. I'd like to move beyond that now. Driving home this morning, I decided I want to ramp my voice up a notch, and I decided I would write you and ask you for advice. When I got home, I found these in my mailbox, 2 books of Christian propaganda. I find this irony exceptionally delicious. Thank you, God. Message received. Is there somewhere I can go where theists and atheists have constructive conversations?" I'm going to pause here. There's a whole lot more to this email. This is a huge point, because I think there are places where they have constructive conversations, but I think that I can't think of any place where it's primarily or exclusively constructive conversations. I think that you can have those. I think that you can have them on Twitter and in Discord and Facebook. It's just that they're few and far between. You have to work your way through a lot of crappy conversations before you get to the ones that are more constructive. He continues, "I don't want to simply add to the angry noise of social media. I think we desperately need to turn down the heat in this country, and I don't want to simply throw fuel on the fire by being one of the endless snarky commenters on every Christian post. But I'm starting to feel a real need to question people's beliefs and try to get them to recognize bullshit when they see it. I'm deeply disturbed by the conspiracy theories that have taken root in this country." Me too. "And I think that the atheist experience helped me to realize that these beliefs are largely inspired by a belief in God. A person who believes in ancient myths and the invisible man in the sky is likely to believe just about anything. I have a Christian friend who bet me $1 in 2011 that we would have one world order by 2012. This level of ignorance is staggering to me, and I will likely go to my grave as baffled by that comment as I was the moment he said it. On the other hand, I had a very short exchange with someone the other day who said that she knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that God was helping her and answering her prayers. I wanted so badly to go into the argument of belief versus knowledge, but I let it go. I didn't see the point in alienating someone who I considered a friend, and I don't want to piss off good Christians who are trying to do good things. But I can see how Christian-fueled conspiracy theories are becoming a dangerous threat to this country, and I want to try to do something about it. There's more here, including my partner says, I just like to fight and I like to be right, which is true. She doesn't think it's helpful to fight with other people over their beliefs, and she has a point. I feel compelled to do it all the same. Recently, I was visited by a pair of Jehovah's Witnesses. I turned them away immediately, saying I wasn't interested. Ever since, I've been wishing I'd invited them in for a conversation. Is it just a matter of not being timid about letting fly with my opinions? Am I just looking for a way to have my voice heard without getting my hands dirty? What's your best advice for someone who's just getting started and wants to have a larger, more compelling voice? I'd really like to have a meaningful conversation. Hugely appreciative. Well, thanks so much. And thanks for reaching out, Jim. There's no easy answer here, and you have to find what your comfort level is. But I will say, in much the way that you decided not to push back on that person about distinctions about belief and knowledge, that's probably a good thing, because that may have been the perfect conversation to have to get them to a level of awareness of an underlying problem with their position. Or it may have been a topic so foreign to them that it actually worked in opposition to clarity and understanding. I think, despite you not wanting to just sit there and snark on social media, I think starting with social media and engaging is one possible outlet. I know there's we mentioned on the atheist experience that there's an atheist versus theist debate group that's been set up, which we advertise with each show of AXP. And also there's the unofficial atheist or ACA Discord, where you can go in and have conversations as well. There are people there who are doing this much more frequently than I do. I'm a bit of an oddball in that because I host the atheist experience and the hang up, because I'm constantly doing debates, I don't, in my downtime, run around trying to find places to have good discussions. I don't go out seeking debates. They come to me now. I'm fortunate enough that if I wanted to have an argument, I wouldn't have to put in any effort to go find one generally. Now, finding an opponent who's willing to actually have a formal, structured public debate, that's a whole different kettle of fish. So I would say start by continuing what you're doing, and just recognize that when you decided not to engage on belief and knowledge and just to let it rest because you cared about your relationship with that person, there may have been something else you could do, which is to just ask the questions of how do they believe beyond a shadow of a doubt, or why do they believe beyond a shadow of a doubt that God's helping and answering their prayers? And then, you can talk about how we've tested intercessory prayer and it doesn't work. The Templeton Foundation has repeatedly tried to demonstrate that there's some substance to intercessory prayer and it doesn't work. And one of the things that you can work towards is like letting people know, okay, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm trying to figure out how I can determine that you're correct. Because when you tell me that you are convinced that God is answering your prayers, but you can't provide a way for everyone else to verify that this is actually what's happening, my brain looks at that and says, how is this any different than saying you've got a lucky rabbit's foot or a lucky pair of socks? How is this any different from any other speculative, untestable claim? And if you're so convinced, it may not be easy for you to convince someone else, but it should at least be plausible for you to be able to engage with something other than, well, I just believe it, or, well, it's just faith. Your partner telling you that you like to fight, that you like to be right, which is true. Thanks for acknowledging it. I don't so much like to fight, but I do like to be right. And I do like to have the conversations where if I suspect that somebody else is wrong or that I might be, I absolutely can't stop until I get some sort of closure on it. As a matter of fact, a lack of closure is probably the most frustrating thing that I deal with, and something you may have to face as well. I wouldn't write off all of social media. There are good places, and it's a good way to get started. And if you try to do it in a way that is perhaps different from what other people have done, we are happy to learn better approaches and better ways of having those conversations. Like I said, I'm in an unusual position, so I don't have to go looking for debates. And it may be better to take your question to people on the Discord or on the various forums to find out where they're having conversations and how good they are. That's it for this month, March 2022 patron questions. If you'd like to have your questions answered and addressed more thoroughly, you can also become a patron here at patreon.com/atheist debates. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.